Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. We are pleased to have a repeat guest, Kimberly Peeler-Allen, and you are the founder of Higher Heights. And you met with us back in 2012 when we talked about the lack of women in higher office and what your organization aimed to do about it. And I felt I had to bring you back to congratulate you on your efforts. We've got 102 women in the House, and how many are in the Senate?
It's over 30.
So there you have it. You've been doing some good work. But before we get started talking to you about what you've been able to accomplish, let me introduce our panelistas. We have Colette Ellis, Ellen Salpeter, and Phyllis Whitethorn. So talk to us about the excitement around having these women in office. What is it that you're hearing just in the landscape about having all of these women? I think the first Muslim women, Native American women, it's just amazing. The youngest that's ever been elected is a woman. So talk to us about what you're hearing out there.
Well, I think one of the things that we've been hearing, and at Higher Heights we focus on helping Black women specifically make sure that they have the tools to run, win, and lead. And as we've been traveling the country, people are really seeing that, you know, for far too long, it has been the same voices around the decision-making tables.
Absolutely,
They've been white, they've been male, they've been, you know, upper echelon in society, and saying, you know what, that does not reflect my life experience. And for us to make better decisions for our country, and for us to be able to say, okay, I know that my representative is really carrying my issues forward. I need to have someone who reflects my life experience. So being able to look at candidates about, you know, for their entire life experience, and having that intersection of race and gender has really empowered so many more people to get involved in the process and say, okay, I want to make sure that someone who has a wider life experience is at the table. So, you know, women, and particularly women of color, this is the most diverse Congress. I saw some headlines from 2016 where that was touted as the most diverse Congress ever. And then we blew those numbers out the water, which is fantastic. And we're just really thrilled that we now have the largest number of Black women serving in Congress ever. And you know, with 5 coming in this freshman class, which is, you know, an astounding number, and seeing these women now also be in leadership and helping to direct policy and priorities and lead some of these major committees, that is really helping to shape the policy and being able to move the country forward, and you know, really serve as that check and balance on the executive branch.
Now, my question is, who votes for these women? Are there people that look like them, or are we as Black women able to get a diverse electorate?
One of the things that we saw really interestingly, particularly in this cycle, is that Black women in particular did not just win in Black districts.
That's what I want to hear.
They won in districts that were not diverse. We have Lauren Underwood, who won in Illinois 14 in a district that is less than 3% Black. And she won very handily in the primary and won very strongly in the general. And we're seeing that, you know, yes, absolutely, Black women are coming out in force because they're seeing, and you know, part of the work that we
vote.
Yes,
vote.
Absolutely. And nobody has been telling that story because so many elections in the past, the close ones have been said, you know, people have said, oh, it's single women or you know, college-age women, but nobody was going deep into the numbers to see that actually in many of these close elections, like in Ohio,
Look at Doug Jones.
Exactly.
He brought him home.
Exactly. And before that, these races had been, the margin of victory was almost a direct correlation to the number of black women that came out to vote. So having that number combined with the Virginia numbers in 2017, the Doug Jones race, the special election in Alabama in December of 17, it really laid the groundwork, and black women across the country were saying, wait a minute, we have this power, and we're able to really not just run and be part of the process, but we are the kingmakers and the queen makers. We make the difference. And when we mobilize our networks, we can really help shape policy and politics from the top of the ticket on down, and that is what affects our day-to-day lives.
Seems like there was so many issues, though, that drove that confluence of women, black and others, to come to the polls from, Republican women electing Donald Trump to, there were so many issues with the Me Too movement where people were so mobilized and so angry about the direction of the country that everyone, I think we talked about this earlier, said, I need to do something. I need to take action. I need to make a difference in whatever way I can as a voter.
Absolutely.
I think about someone that you got behind that didn't make it, but I think there's a ton of lessons learned, and that's Stacey Abrams. I'd like to kind of unpack that a bit, because even though she lost, I still feel she's a winner.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about why Stacey Abrams is a winner.
I think Stacey Abrams is a winner because she has set the standard of how to run as in your authentic self. Because she made a speech a year before the election and said, I shouldn't have to change my hair, lose weight, change how I dress, or anything to be able to run and serve as governor. And she just said, this is who I am, but this is what my voice will bring. I'm standing up. She would say, I'm coming for Georgia. And really that just was something that just inspired so many other black women who said, you know what, I don't have to fall into these different stereotypes or molds to be a successful
That's very
candidate.
important right there.
I can speak, I can run as my authentic self. And in this climate, really the running as your authentic self is what the electorate was really looking for. They are tired of people, lying or saying what they think, you want to hear, but saying, you know what, this is my life.
I think the diversity of the women who did succeed, and Stacey Abrams, I think, was a real case in point of pretty much getting there in decades of gerrymandering and a whole bunch of other reasons and suppression as to why she might not have won. But I think the diversity from Donna Shalala, who's probably the oldest woman in the House,
she's been around since the Clintons,
to the youngest, I think there's so many ways to be a woman in Congress, so I think that authenticity is what people are buying.
But to your point, though, about authenticity, and then I also found Stacey to be inspiring because she would speak so compellingly about the issues.
Right,
She was
right.
spot on, and facts were inaccurate, and I think it does change the perspective. I hope it changes the perspective of people seeing black women in that way. Authentic, real, intelligent.
Are we threatening,
and
though?
capable.
I'm wondering. And by threatening, meaning we're not. But are we perceived that way? I mean, here is a powerful.
From her.
What I liked was the way she would take on her opponents. Really dogged. Meaning, how does that play, generally speaking?
Well, I think when black women come to the table, and the first thing you have to do is win that primary of self, of saying I have, I know
I like
enough.
primary of self.
Yes.
Oh wow,
That's great.
That's it. Primary of self. Very good. Yes.
And we're not going to jump out there without making sure that we know the issues inside
And that's
out.
a woman thing. That's a woman thing.
Exactly.
Right.
So when you come well prepared and you're speaking with your authentic self and you're bringing the voices of the masses with you, you are a threat. You're a threat to the status quo. And this Congress definitely shows that.
But I don't think of her as a threat in your stereotypical I don't want to even
Angry black
yes, exactly.
woman.
I'm trying not
Right,
to say
that's
those
okay. Go
words.
right ahead.
Right.
Right.
I just don't like saying it because
I hear you
like
because
it.
we don't want to perpetuate
Right,
it.
exactly. So I found her to be very credible.
Yep.
I's dotted, T's crossed, and still approachable. Like I felt like we could have her here on the couch. And
Exactly.
I think it would be a really interesting and fun conversation.
Right.
But I think it goes back to Michelle Obama's when they go low, we go high. And I think that women across the spectrum have to do all of the things, especially women of color, you know, because their reach is higher. We're from where they're starting from in many cases. And I just think that it's so important to both be your authentic self, to be prepared, to speak with authority, but compassion and empathy. And I'm so sick of the status quo, and I think so many voters are.
I certainly hope so. You were going to say something.
Well, I guess everything that I'm seeing is a change in consciousness in women generally, and we're not worried about being, you know,
Except for the
found
Senate
as a
Judiciary
threat
Committee.
because we bring something and we're courageous enough to bring it and to know that we have something valuable. I think for a long time we used to sit back and some of those questions about perception and not even seeing ourselves in that seat. And I see a big change in that.
What can we do, though, with media and the coverage of women in the media, which I still think is tougher on females than it is on males? And I think of Elizabeth Warren and how she's been cast. You know, this is a really sharp, dedicated public servant, and you know, we're stuck with this whole it's just ridiculous. So what can we do as women, since we are mobilizing and finding our voice and realizing we have incredible voting strength? What can we do to change some of that?
One of the things that we've been doing at Higher Heights is really helping to try and drive the narrative. So every time
that's the word.
that
Drive the narrative.
there's a story like that attacks a woman on something that is irrelevant, like her clothing, her
Right.
hair,
What her spouse is
Whether
gonna
she
do.
looks good.
Right.
Which men get asked about that?
Exactly. Every time we see an article like that or see something like that, we try and counter it, find something else out there,
Right, change the
and
conversation.
exactly change the conversation and emphasize the strengths. Or let's have a conversation on the merits of the argument. You're on one side and you're on the other. Let's talk about that, not about each other's shoes. So really being selective about what we lift up. And there's no need to perpetuate the cycle. And the reason that they talk about this stuff is because it continues to churn. So by cutting it off and not giving it oxygen, then you're forced to focus on the issues and their platform and their plan and their strategy and what they're going to do if elected, and not so much on
And if
the
they
other
can't,
issues.
and if they don't have that, I think the other challenge, and I guess this is something that obviously Tony has created with Brooklyn Savvy, it's also the forum for these
Exactly.
conversations and being able to point to when people don't have their facts or when facts are inaccurate. And so it doesn't matter what you're wearing on the show, it's a matter of, do you know what you're talking about?
Exactly.
And I do think that in this current administration, facts have become irrelevant. So for the new Congress and the new members of Congress bringing that back to the table and saying, actually, facts really matter. The truth matters. We tell our children not to lie. That's how it should be. And while recognizing that there are different ways to tell a story and both sides of the aisle and people have different opinions, that's okay. But it needs to be rooted in fact and figures.
Absolutely.